Oh my gosh, that is so cute.
What else do you put in?
That's probably good.
Okay.
I think I'll be able to work with that. Do I want to do an introduction now or just film one later? I'll just do it now. Hey guys, it's Tori. Welcome back to my channel. And today, as you can tell from the title, I am interviewing my friend Ashtyn, who is a Regency romance author. She is self-published, though in the beginning, she started out working with an indie publisher, right? And then now is self-published and does amazing, is so wonderful. So we're going to talk to her about Regency stuff and Jane Austen. We're having our little tea party. We have biscuits, American biscuits, and we have lemonade, not tea, because it's too hot for tea. So here we are. We got my Jane Austen novels right here to add ambiance, and we're ready to go. So
Yay.
Thank you for coming to talk to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Super excited. I've been so excited for this video, honestly. I thought about it like literally right before Jane Austen July started, and I was like, that'd be perfect. I hope she can do it. So this is perfect.
I didn't even know Jane Austen July was a thing.
Yeah, it's just, on BookTube, there's a couple of girls, two of them are in the UK. Well, one of them has moved back and forth. I think she's in Germany now. And then one of them is an American, and they just started up. It's so fun. In fact, there's a really fun video. I'll link it down below for those who haven't seen it as a little plug. But from one girl who did like a task mistress like game show thing earlier in the month with like things to do with Jane Austen. It was so good.
That sounds so fun.
So good. So I'm gonna link that down below. Also, all the proceeds from that video are being donated to a charity, so that's another reason I want to plug it. So definitely go check that out if you haven't seen it already.
We should probably acknowledge our bonnets.
Oh yes. As you can tell, we're wearing bonnets because why not?
This is not a normal summer accessory for me, even though some people would probably guess that about me.
We would wish that it could be a regular summer accessory, but
we'll just start
alas,
a new trend.
Here we are. Starting off, I wanted to ask you, how did you get into Regency romance? Because I know, so we've been friends, I should mention, we've been friends for like almost our whole lives, off and on. I mean, there was like a period after like kindergarten, before junior high, that we were we wouldn't like necessarily hang out very much.
We were in the same kindergarten class, I remember
it was
that.
Kindergarten, and then in junior high we started hanging out a lot more. And so I know she's loved Regency romance since like high school and probably even earlier. But so what was it that got you into Regency romance?
Well, I just started reading like the Regency romances by contemporary authors, like Sarah Eden and Julianne Donaldson. There's who I started with. And then I started watching all the adaptations because I didn't even know about that time period. And I just loved the costumes, and I loved the gentlemen, the gallantry and everything. And then that's what made me want to try writing one. So that's like where my love of the time period started, was just when I was like 15 and reading all those books.
I love that. I know some people on BookTube have read Julianne Donaldson with Edenbrooke, especially in Blackmoore. I don't know if as many would know Sarah M. Eden, but she's a great author to check
Super
out.
good.
Next question is, what made you want to be a writer?
That was also around the same time. I think what really made me want to be a writer was learning about the Regency era, like reading all those stories, watching all those movies. It like made me want to try, because I've always been someone who like sees something cool and just wants to do it. Or like if those books made me so happy, I wanted to be able to make other people feel all giddy when they read a story like that. And so I was in an English class in my sophomore year, and I wrote like a short story, and my teacher gave me really good feedback and kind of motivated me to think like, oh, maybe I could be good at writing. And that's when I started writing my first book, was when I was 15, my sophomore year. So
it's so cool. When did you get your first book published again?
So I got under contract my senior year, and then it released like a year later.
Okay.
I was 18, so it was end of 2016.
That's right, because it came out right after I went on my mission. So I was like bummed because I couldn't read it right away, but I did eventually, so it's fine. Anyway, next question along similar lines is, how did you get specifically into Jane Austen, and how has she influenced you as a writer, if at all?
I think Pride and Prejudice is where I started. When I was learning about what the Regency era was, I had heard of Pride and Prejudice before, but I had never thought to watch it or read it or anything. So I went and got a copy and I read it and I loved it, and then that's when I got into the movies. I've mostly, like I was just telling Tori, I've only read Pride and Prejudice. Isn't that bad? Like, I write Regency and all of Jane Austen's books. I've only read Pride and Prejudice, but I've seen the other movies so many times. I love the stories, and it's a faster way to get them is by watching the movies. And I guess her writing, like from Pride and Prejudice, because that's all I could say, it just like, it taught me a lot about the time period, kind of helped me understand like the manners and the customs and things enough to like get started on my research on my own stories. Yeah. I don't really have anything.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So yes, basically we have a bit of a Jane Austen, I don't want to say novice because that makes it sound like you don't know anything, but like as far as actually reading her books, she's done very little. It's not bad.
It's bad.
They're different language, so
when I
it's hard.
started writing, I like stopped reading as much, which I know I should not do because like I read a lot for work. Like I'll read other authors' manuscripts before they're done and like give feedback. So reading started to feel like kind of related to work for me. And so I write so much. Like I release a book every 3 months or so, sometimes more like 2 months. And so I'm always writing, I'm always around words. And so it's like, when I read, it just feels like a job, kind of. Probably means I need some new recommendations for books that'll like hook me. But
I was gonna say, have you ever tried like audiobooks at all? Have those
a little bit, yeah. I listen to audiobooks when I run.
Okay.
So I like listening to them too.
Because I know Audible, even if you don't like sign up, I think they do have an option for a bunch of free ones, especially with classics. So I'm sure like Jane Austen has a lot of like free
I should just
audiobooks
do that. Like I'm definitely gonna read them. I just need to get around to it.
So I haven't mentioned this on here because it's kind of an in real life thing that I'm doing, but I'm starting up a year of Jane Austen book club this next year. For every 2 months we'll read one of her 6 main novels, and my dad's joining, but he also doesn't read as much as he used to because he's a doctor with over 800 patients, so you know, he's busy, but I think he was gonna do audiobooks too. So
okay, I'll join that challenge.
Try, do it. All right, so getting in a little bit more to Jane Austen and her works, I know you've just experienced mostly the adaptations, but what is your favorite Jane Austen story?
I think my favorite, I'm always torn between Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice and Emma. I don't know, I love them. I think my very favorite is Persuasion because I just feel for Anne so much. Like I know a lot of people don't love her in the 2007 adaptation because they think she's like too reserved and like not fighting for him, but like I totally sympathize with her because I'm more that way. I just relate to her a lot, and I just love Captain Wentworth and the whole story. I love it. I don't know.
Love that. I see, and people on my channel will know, I just barely read Persuasion, and I didn't necessarily love it. I enjoyed it, but like it's not like a least favorite, but it's like in the middle, below Pride and Prejudice, for sure, and then Emma and Sense and Sensibility as well. But I really enjoyed a lot about it, and I feel like as I continue to reread it, I'll like it more. But I actually haven't seen an adaptation.
What?
So I know. So
well,
I need to
you haven't read the book,
right?
Okay, we'll watch Persuasion.
Okay.
You have to see that one.
Okay.
The 2007 one is my favorite. It's so good.
I
his
feel like
letter.
I need to.
love his letter at the end.
Yes, I will say his letter is probably the most romantic thing in all of Jane Austen. I mean, there's a lot of really romantic things, but Captain Wentworth's letter is pretty up there. Absolutely. So I'll need to watch that because maybe it will impact my opinion, but
I guess that is something that inspired my writing was that letter. Like Captain Wentworth's letter made me think about like if I could write a series that was based around letters, because I love letters in books. They're just like, they just hit your heart. They're so good. And so I wrote my Larkhall Letters series, which every book in the series has like a letter that kind of sets the story off. It's not necessarily a love letter, but there's usually a love letter in each book. So that's the series I'm working on now. So I guess that's how Jane Austen's work has influenced my writing. Yeah. You asked me that question earlier. Just had to catch up.
You're good. That's perfect. I love that. Yeah, I've seen you talk about that on Instagram, and I've been curious about that because it sounded so cute. So maybe we'll have to see if I can get around to that one. Do you have a least favorite, or one that you just don't feel like you know very well?
I don't know Mansfield Park very well. I think it's been the least recommended to me, so I never was, like, eager to go read it or watch it. But I haven't given it a fair shot, so I don't know.
That's fair. And honestly, the hard thing with Mansfield Park, and I haven't seen adaptations of, those are the two I haven't seen adaptations of, but I have heard that all the adaptations are awful. Like, that's the one everybody's like, Mansfield Park needs a good adaptation, because... Yeah. The thing is with Fanny Price, the main character, is she's kind of a background character in a lot of it. Like, she's very, like she's present, but she's not really involved, and it's not until, like, the third part that she becomes a little bit more, like, it becomes a little more obvious how she affects everybody else. And so it's kind of hard to make a film of that when she's so quiet. And so a lot of the time they'll make her more, like, I know in one of them at least, they make her more like Lizzie Bennet, where she's more flirtations and stuff, and she's not like that at all.
Okay.
So it's a little frustrating for a lot of fans of Mansfield Park and just of Jane Austen to, like, see that. So that might be one that, honestly, you probably do have to read in order to, like, understand what it is, too. So, but that is one, I do enjoy Mansfield Park a lot. I actually read that at the beginning of this year, and it's not my least favorite. It's, like, just above my least favorite. Okay. And part of the reason for that is, I will say, the male love interest is not great.
Yeah. I don't remember being, like, that enthralled with that one.
Yeah, he doesn't really care about Fanny the way he should. And then at the end they just suddenly get married, and you're like, oh.
that's how I felt with Sense and Sensibility in the movie. Like
with Edward Ferrars. Yeah. Or with Colonel Brandon.
With Colonel Brandon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was just like all of a sudden in the adaptation with what's her name from Titanic?
Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
And Emma Thompson.
Yeah, that one. I love it, but then at the end I'm like, wait, they're getting married all of a sudden.
Yeah, I get that. It even more feels like that in the book, in my opinion, actually.
Really? Even more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's really, you don't really see much, like, conversation between them.
And she's, like, in love with Willoughby the whole time, and then all of a sudden they're getting married.
I do agree with that, although I love Eleanor so much.
Yeah, I love her.
And I honestly love Colonel Brandon, and I feel like Eleanor and Colonel Brandon should have been together, but it's fine. Anyway.
Did you ever watch Sanditon?
I have not watched Sanditon. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't think it's probably how Jane Austen would have had the story go, which was kind of disappointing, but I still love Theo James in it so much that it's worth watching.
I love that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, like, even, like, huge Jane Austen fans say, like, they don't think that's how Jane Austen would have done it, but they still love it.
Yeah, so. It was still really good, and I heard they're making another season.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that was a relief.
I need to check that out. Is it on Netflix, or? No,
I think I watched it through Amazon Prime, like PBS Masterpiece, I think.
Okay, I'll have to check. I feel like it probably was taken down. I've noticed Jane Austen, everything has been taken off of, like, the major subscription services.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And I was like, it was all, like, at the same time. It was like, what in the? I don't know why they were all taken down, but here we are. Anyway, I was really annoyed too, because it was right when I was wanting to watch everything, so
yeah,
that's fine. Okay, next, of course, the big question: do you have favorite, least favorite love interests? The male leads.
Is probably Captain Wentworth. Oh, I don't know, because I do love Mr. Darcy. Yeah, probably Captain Wentworth still, overall. I love the movie version of him, like, the way I don't know, I can't explain why. Why do I love Captain Wentworth? I can't. You go first. This is why I don't do live videos. I just love him, that's all.
That is good enough for me.
Did I say a complete sentence? You can just chop it right there? Or do we
I'm sure I'll break it up into some of the cute moments and cut out the more awkward moments of what just happened.
So, Tori, who's your favorite?
My favorite is probably either Mr. Knightley or Colonel Brandon. I must just be into older men because they're like the oldest. But I just love them.
I know. I do love Knightley too.
And I feel like they just feel, I don't know what it is. I feel like they almost feel more like, because they're older, they're like more aware and a little bit more down to earth and aware of like other people.
Yeah, I love when Knightley saves Harriet at the dance. That's my favorite.
So sweet. I love
That's when you just fall in love with him. You're like, oh, that's so sweet. And that's when Emma falls in love with him, I feel like.
Exactly. I would agree. And then, yeah, just Colonel Brandon, like, even though I can understand people being a little weird with his relationship with Marianne, I also feel like he has such a heart. Like, he even goes so far when he's, like, talking about Willoughby's past. He's even willing to admit, like, there's every chance he could have actually loved your sister. Like, there's every chance he could have actually loved Marianne. Even though he was, like, the competitor, he was willing to be, like, you know,
give
like...
him the benefit of the
yeah,
doubt.
exactly. And I just really admire that. And I just love that. I would say least favorite, probably definitely Edmund Bertram in Mansfield Park, which we already kind of talked about.
Yeah.
He's just... does not deserve her at all. I would say second least favorite, probably Captain Wentworth.
Really?
But to be fair, I think if I watched an adaptation, I'd like him better.
I can see where you're coming
from,
though.
In the book, though, he's just not really in it very much. So I just feel like I don't even know him. And I think his letter is so sweet, but I'm like, beyond that, like, he just has no personality to me based on that book. So again, maybe it could change over time, and I think I don't think he's bad. Yeah. It's just more like an indifference towards him, as opposed to active dislike.
Yeah, he's kind of, like, the way in the movie, like, when I watch it with someone who hasn't seen it, they're like, oh, he's so mean to her, like, because he kind of snubs her a little because he's so hurt by her first rejection, like, so many years before. And then it looks like he's flirting with Louisa, and, like, it hurts Anne, you can tell. So then you're kind of mad at him, but then you know he's just hurting too, and they're both just hurting, and they both love each other so much, and then his letter just makes up for it.
Yeah. He just wins everyone over, whoever watches Persuasion. So I'm hoping that will change. I really think my feelings towards Persuasion will change as I reread it and, like, watch adaptations and stuff. Just right now I'm like, it was good. I enjoyed it. I would read it again. It's not like a least favorite. It's not like a favorite, but it's good. It's fine. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, let's chat other characters. Are there other characters that you just love, or scenes that you're just like, oh my gosh, I just love this scene so much, or this person so much?
I crack up about Mr. Collins all the time. Like, all the Mr. Collins memes out there make me laugh so hard, and just his character is so good because he's not, like, bad necessarily, like, he's just weird and annoying. But then, like, everyone that plays him so well. I feel like you can't go wrong. You just have to act, like, creepy. And then you're Mr. Collins. Like, he's just so good. Every time I watch it, I die.
He's just so tactless. And you kind of feel bad for him because you can tell it's, like, social awkwardness, too, that he just doesn't know.
He doesn't have these social cues. He can't recognize them. And, like, he can't take no for an answer. And
although something recently, well, not recently, it was like a year ago, but there was one video that was posted. I'll also link that down below since I'm mentioning it. But this girl, Katie, brought up, she made a whole video about Mr. Collins. And she brought up the fact that, like, in adaptations, he's always, like, cast as someone who's, like, 40 years old. But in the book, he's, like, 25.
Interesting.
And so, it's interesting to think about how that changes how you view his character. From, like, this, like, awkward, like, creepy 40-year-old man to, like, just this little, like,
someone that's, like,
young
closer
adult,
to their age,
our age, who's just figuring it out. And it's, like, you're like, oh, it makes you feel even more bad for him because he's just, like, this, like, little guy who's just odd. He's just odd. And you're like, oh. Anyway, I also love, on similar lines, I love Mr. Elton.
Oh, yeah.
So much.
Also kind of a similar character.
Like, the carriage scene. Oh,
I love
gets
that
me
one.
every time. I just love it so much.
Did you watch the 2020, Emma?
Yes.
I love the Mr. Elton in that one.
He does so good. I think that's probably my favorite of the Mr. Eltons I've seen. I mean, I've only seen the Gwyneth Paltrow and that one, so I haven't seen a ton, but
Oh,
I really
you need to
liked
see
him.
the BBC one.
I've heard that's so good.
That
Like
one's so good.
it's everyone on BookTube says that their favorite Emma is the miniseries, so I feel like I need to see it.
Yeah, you would love it. That one's good.
I was going to, and then they took all the Austen things off of
Now
all the
where do you
subscription
even watch
services.
it?
So anyway, I'll have to like rent it or something, see
Yeah.
what I can do. But I'll need to check that out because I've heard good things about that. Sorry, I feel like there was another character I was going to talk about.
Oh, I also loved Miss Bates in the 2020.
Oh, I was going to say, I honestly, like, all the characters in Emma, I just adore. I think that's probably why it's my favorite. Because, like, yeah, the Bates, the Miss and Mrs. Bates, especially Miss Bates, she just kills me. And even Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax are so interesting to me. I don't always feel like they get their dues in adaptations.
Yeah, they're usually in it kind of briefly, I feel like.
Yeah, they're not in it very much, but like in the book, they're so interesting. And their romance, honestly, when you read it, even though it all pretty much happens off page, like, it's honestly really cute, especially for one of the side romances.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Frank Churchill, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like he is kind of a jerk. But it's still interesting to see him with Jane Fairfax. And then I love Mr. Woodhouse, too. So much. And yeah, in the 2020, he's so good.
Yeah, everything about that adaptation is, the costumes are so cool.
So cool. And like just the scenery is so pretty. They did such a good job of it. I know a lot of people didn't love it, which is to be expected. I feel like Jane Austen is probably one of the authors, like, her stories cause the most, like, contention. Like, not contention so much as, like, just, debate and, like, disagreements. Like, I feel like every ranking video I've seen of all her novels is always different. There's not a single one of them that I haven't heard someone say is their favorite.
Yeah.
At one point. But I feel like the same thing with like adaptations is like there's all over the map opinions about what's the better one. Even like Pride and Prejudice, there's that huge debate over 2005 versus the miniseries. And I feel like most people say the miniseries, but honestly I've heard several people say the 2005.
Well, which one's your favorite?
But that's hard because I do like the look of the 2005. But I will say I feel like the miniseries is much more accurate to the book. And I think while I love Keira Knightley, I don't think she portrays Elizabeth the way most people read Elizabeth. Not that she does a bad job, and if you've never read the book, you probably wouldn't even like notice or think anything about it and would think she just did fine, but like she just doesn't quite portray Elizabeth the way I think most people imagine her when they read it. So I do, and Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy is just...
He does so well. I think he's a better Darcy for sure. I liked both Lizzies, but I think, in my opinion, Colin Firth played Mr. Darcy better.
Yeah. I heard one girl, I'm just bringing up all these channels, you're welcome guys for the shout outs, but anyway, her channel's Milena Reads, but she recently did like a ranking of adaptations. And she was saying, she's like, Jane Austen literally went forward in time, saw Colin Firth, and then wrote him as Mr. Darcy. He literally is Mr. Darcy.
That's true.
So I loved that. I'm like, it had to have happened. She just knew. Anyway, but yeah. So I feel like I probably would put the miniseries slightly higher, but I don't, like, look down on the 2005 as much as a lot of people do.
And they're both so good.
Well, since we're on adaptations, what is your favorite and least favorite adaptations overall?
That's tricky. I think my favorite that I've watched the most is probably the BBC, the miniseries Pride and Prejudice. But I have watched the 2007 Persuasion a ton. Probably just as much. So those two are probably tied. My least favorite was probably Mansfield Park. Like I said before, I don't remember which adaptation it was because I watched it so long ago and I didn't ever rewatch it.
It did not stand out.
I need to give it another chance and then I'll be able to compare better.
Yeah, again, I would probably say just read the book on that one and don't worry about the adaptations unless you want to. Cause,
maybe once I read it, then I'll be like, okay, now I want to watch it again. But
it's a big, like, debate. Well, not debate. It's just a huge, like, thing on booktube, and I'm sure in other places in the bookish community, where like people just get angry that Mansfield Park doesn't have a good adaptation. It's like one of the ones that deserves one. I know there was even someone, I can't remember who, but who mentioned like they don't even like Mansfield Park, but they're like they are angry that it has no good adaptations. So, but I do think it would be hard to do it. So I also understand people's struggle, like the directors and writers struggle to make a good one, because it is, you know, you're just kind of watching it from the sidelines a lot. But I do speaking, going back to characters, I do love the Crawfords a lot, so I'd be very curious to see how they're portrayed. But they're not the main characters, they're just they're the kind of the antagonists. But honestly, I kind of wish that Fanny had ended up with Henry Crawford as opposed to Edmund. So even though he's kind of, you know, he's a little bit... You
really hate Edmund, don't you?
Yeah, I really hate him. And honestly, I feel like Henry, even though he's a not great person and he causes a woman to leave her husband by the end of the book, not good. But I feel like he recognizes Fanny's value before anyone else does. And so, oddly enough, I think he's the one who really sees it. Even though part of his interest is not so pure, he does notice that she has like a lot of integrity and is really good. So I like that about him. But anyway, moving off of that, back to adaptations. I would say probably my favorite, I don't know, I had seen Sense and Sensibility with Kate Winslet and Emma Thompson a long time ago, but I recently watched it and I just fell in love with it so much. So I just love that one a lot.
It does weird me out that Snape.
I know, Alan Rickman.
Yes.
I know, it does throw me off.
All
But
I can
honestly,
think of is Snape.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I feel like it helps that he's like blonde and younger.
Yeah.
It doesn't like affect me quite as much as it probably would. But yeah, it is
like
little,
all I can't get past it. It's all I can think of.
Absolutely.
Seeing him smile, I'm like, Snape doesn't smile.
But yeah, I love that one. And then Emma, I do like the 2020 Emma. Again, I need to see the miniseries still. But I did really, really like that film as well. Good. Again, I just love Emma so much. Emma and Sense and Sensibility are also my favorite books, so that would make sense. I love the adaptations. I think least favorite that I've seen, I recently saw Northanger Abbey with J.J. Field, and while I did enjoy it, it wasn't like a negative experience. I think of the ones I've seen, that probably is my least favorite. But I still I really like Northanger. I think it's really cute, and J.J. Field is just a wonderful man.
Wonderful man.
He's just a wonderful man. I mean, outside of like direct Jane Austen adaptations, Austenland
is, I love it. I've seen that so many times.
I'm obsessed. I feel like that's one of the earliest like Jane Austen films we watched together, huh? Because Anna watched it and was like, you guys got to see this. And it was so good. Drink break. Okay, so that's about all I had for you, but the last question I do have for you is, what are some books that you've written that you would recommend people start with if they're interested in your work?
There's a lot now. I just published my 17th book. I'd say my most popular one has been The Last Eligible Bachelor. It's part of a multi-author series, but each of our stories stand alone. They just have a common theme. And so mine is it's basically a Regency version of The Bachelor. So this girl sends her maid in her place. It's kind of like, I didn't think of this as I wrote it, but it's kind of like the Goose Girl, like the Grimm Brothers. I think it's by the Grimm Brothers. But people just when they reviewed it, they're like, it's kind of like a mashup of The Goose Girl and The Bachelor, but set in Regency. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that, because it's been so long since I've read that fairy tale. But so this girl sends her maid in her place to be disguised as her to this house party. And there's one more eligible bachelor in town, and there's 5 girls, and they're all fighting over him. And I don't know why, but people just really connected with that story. So that's my most popular if you want a standalone. I also do series. My Larkhall Letters series, that's the one I'm writing right now. 3 books have released so far, there will be 5. It's just, they're connected by characters, so each one stands alone. You can read them in any order, but then you get to see a character you love from the previous one have their own story, so kind of fun to read them together.
Okay, so I will link her Amazon page down below so you can check out all her books. And I will also link her Instagram down below. It's so cute. Go check it out. It's wonderful. But anyway, thank you so much for coming and doing this with me.
Thank you.
This was
It's
so
fun to chat.
You know, talk about Jane Austen.
I need
Always
to
a
read
blast.
these. I'm going to just read all of them by the end of the year.
We'll make sure she does. She's going to join my little Year of Jane Austen book club, and so we'll force her to read all of them.
And I'm sure I'll love them. I just haven't gotten around to it.
And like honestly, if you're not used to reading classics, it's just hard to get into them. Like it takes time too, so that also doesn't help when you're trying to think about it. But anyway, thank you guys for so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on anything we talked about, what you love in Jane Austen. Also feel free to ask Ashtyn any questions, and I'll kind of lead her to comments and she'll be able to answer, especially about her books. I'm sure she'd love to answer any questions about those. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!
Bye!